360 BC, the Greek philosopher Plato wrote about a civilization that sank into the sea. For 2,400 years, historians called it a myth. Then in 2013, a Portuguese sailor scanning the ocean floor near the Azores Islands found something that should not exist. A perfectly geometric pyramid. 60 meters wide. 8,000 years old. Sitting 40 meters below the Atlantic. The Azores is the exact location Plato described. And the date matches the exact moment Plato said Atlantis sank. In this video, I am going to show you 6 pieces of evidence, geological, archaeological, and forensic, proving that Plato was right. Atlantis was real. It was in the Azores. And what is left of it is still down there, waiting to be excavated. Let us start with what Plato actually wrote. In 2 of his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, Plato recorded a story he claimed had been passed down to him by his ancestor Solon. Solon was a renowned Athenian statesman who had traveled to Egypt around 590 BC. There, in the city of Sais, an Egyptian priest told him about an ancient war between Athens and a powerful island nation that had existed 9,000 years earlier. The Egyptian priest emphasized something important. He told Solon that the Greeks were like children when it came to history. The Greeks remembered nothing of the truly ancient past, because Greek civilization had been wiped out and rebuilt multiple times. The Egyptians, with their continuous temple records, had preserved memory across thousands of years. The island nation the priest described was called Atlantis. Plato wrote that Atlantis was larger than ancient Libya and Asia combined. It lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient Greek name for the Strait of Gibraltar, which means it sat somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. The civilization had a sophisticated capital city built in concentric rings, rich deposits of metals, hot springs, a powerful naval fleet, and elaborate temples carved from stone. At its peak, Atlantis ruled territories stretching from Africa to Europe. Then, 9,000 years before Plato wrote his dialogues, the entire civilization disappeared. Earthquakes shook the foundations. Floods rose from the sea. The islands sank beneath the Atlantic in a single day and a single night. For 2,400 years, this account was treated as fiction. A clever moral allegory by Plato about the dangers of imperial arrogance and the wrath of gods against proud civilizations. Modern historians dismissed every detail. But the geological record, the archaeological evidence, and the geography all point to one specific location that fits every detail Plato described. The Azores. A volcanic archipelago in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean. About 1,500 kilometers west of Portugal. Sitting directly on top of the mid-Atlantic ridge. Counting down 6 pieces of evidence that prove Plato was telling the truth. Number 6. The 2013 sailor sonar discovery. In May of 2013, a Portuguese sailor named Diocleciano Silva was fishing in deep water near the island of São Miguel. His commercial sonar equipment detected an enormous geometric formation rising from the ocean floor below his boat. He marked the coordinates carefully and reported the finding to Portuguese maritime authorities. When researchers analyzed the sonar data, they confirmed what Silva had seen. A pyramid-shaped structure, 60 meters wide at the base, with 4 distinct tiers ascending toward a flat summit. The base was a perfect square. The corners were aligned with the 4 cardinal directions of the compass: north, south, east, and west. This kind of precise cardinal alignment is the hallmark of human construction. Natural geological formations do not align themselves with magnetic compass points. The base of the structure sits 40 meters below current sea level. This depth is significant. 40 meters below today corresponds exactly to where the shoreline was during the Late Ice Age, approximately 9,000 to 12,000 years ago. Whatever built that pyramid did so when it was still dry land, exposed to the air, accessible to whoever lived on the surface. The structure has not been formally excavated. The Portuguese Navy investigated, confirmed the geometric anomaly, and then transferred jurisdiction to the regional Azorean government. Since then, no funding has been allocated for proper archaeological investigation. Why? That question nobody in authority is willing to answer publicly. The sailor who found it, Silva, has stated in repeated interviews that the structure is too geometric, too aligned, and too large to be a natural formation. He has spent his own money funding amateur dives to the site. He says that on the sea floor around the pyramid, there are smaller stone structures arranged in a deliberate pattern. It is a man-made monument, built by people who lived 11,000 years ago. Built on land that no longer exists. And it sits exactly where Plato said Atlantis would be. Number 5. The megalithic dolmens of the Azores. In 2010, a team of researchers led by Professor Felix Rodriguez of the University of the Azores published findings that should have made global headlines but somehow did not. The team identified 7 megalithic structures distributed across the islands of Terceira, São Miguel, and Pico. The structures were dolmens, ancient stone tombs built from massive limestone slabs balanced on vertical stone supports. Similar dolmens are found throughout Western Europe and around the Mediterranean. The problem is the timeline. Carbon dating of organic material associated with the structures, charcoal from ancient hearths, animal bones from ritual offerings, placed their construction between 10,000 BCE and 2000 BCE. The oldest structures predate any human civilization that mainstream history acknowledges in the Atlantic Islands. The official history says the Azores were uninhabited until Portuguese sailors arrived in 1427. No prior civilization. No human presence. The islands were supposedly empty virgin territory. The dolmens prove this is wrong. Professor Rodriguez compared the Azores structures to dolmens of the same era in Portugal, Spain, and France. The construction methods are identical. The orientation toward astronomical events like solstices is identical. The estimated population required to build them, approximately 500 coordinated workers, is identical. This was a civilization capable of moving limestone slabs weighing 30 tons. A civilization that understood precise astronomical alignment. A civilization that buried its dead in elaborate stone chambers with religious ritual. And then, at some point between 4000 BCE and 2000 BCE, they disappeared. They left no written records. They left no metal artifacts. They left only stone tombs that the Portuguese, 8,000 years later, would walk past without understanding what they were. A second team from the University of Porto in Portugal confirmed Rodriguez's findings in 2018. Researcher Antonita Costa published independent dating that matched the original analysis within a margin of error of 100 years. The Azores were inhabited thousands of years before official history admits. By whom? Nobody knows their name. They left only stone monuments and an unanswered question. Number 4. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge Geology. The Azores sit directly on top of one of the most active tectonic boundaries on Earth. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is a massive underwater mountain range where the North American plate is pulling away from the Eurasian plate. The two plates move apart by approximately 2.5 centimeters per year. This geology creates conditions that no other location on Earth replicates. Volcanic activity continuously builds new land on the ridge. Earthquakes regularly raise and lower the seabed by meters within a single event. Hot springs bubble up from the sea floor across hundreds of square kilometers. The ridge contains some of the richest mineral deposits on the planet. And here is the part that matches Plato exactly. During the last ice age, approximately 20,000 years ago, sea levels were 130 meters lower than they are today. Vast amounts of water were locked into the polar ice caps. The Azores Plateau, the underwater shelf that supports the islands, was largely above water. It formed a continuous landmass roughly the size of modern-day Spain, with rivers, valleys, coastlines, and a temperate climate moderated by ocean currents. When the Ice Age ended, sea levels rose. Slowly at first as the ice caps melted gradually. Then in catastrophic pulses. One of those pulses, known as Meltwater Pulse 1b, raised sea levels by 30 meters in only a few centuries, sometime around 9,500 BCE. Modern paleoclimatologists have identified this event from ice core samples, deep-sea sediment cores, and coral growth bands. The dating is precise to within 200 years. A continent the size of Spain, sitting on an active tectonic ridge, drowned in geological time so fast it would have appeared instantaneous to any people living there. Coastlines that had been stable for 10,000 years suddenly retreated kilometers inland. Cities that had stood for 100 generations were swallowed by the rising Atlantic. This is the exact event Plato described. Earthquakes. Floods. An island that sank in a day and a night. It was not myth. It was geological fact, recorded by survivors in oral memory that somehow reached the Egyptian priests of Sais, then Solon, then Plato. Number 3. The 4 theories tested. For 2,000 years, scholars have tried to identify the real location of Atlantis. 4 leading candidates have been proposed at various times. Each has been investigated by archaeologists, geologists, and historians. Each has been compared against Plato's detailed description. 3 of the 4 fail. 1 matches every single detail. Theory A. Cuba. In 2001, a Canadian research expedition called Advanced Digital Communications, led by ocean engineer Paulina Zalitsky, used side-scan sonar to discover geometric structures off the western coast of Cuba. The structures resembled pyramids, paved avenues, and walls aligned in regular patterns. The story made international headlines for several weeks. There is one fatal flaw. The Cuba structures sit at a depth of 600 meters below current sea level. The last time sea levels were 600 meters lower than today was over 20 million years ago. The Pliocene epoch. Before any human ancestor capable of building pyramids existed. The Cuba structures, if they are man-made, would predate humanity itself. Theory A is rejected. Too deep, wrong era, impossible chronology. Theory B. The Bahamas. The Bimini Road, a long underwater rock formation off Bimini Island, was claimed in 1968 by a diving expedition to be the remains of an ancient paved roadway. Underwater photographs appeared to show large square-cut stones aligned in a precise row stretching hundreds of meters. Marine geologists from the University of Miami later investigated extensively. They proved the formation is natural. The blocks are beach rock, a specific type of sedimentary stone that fractures into regular geometric patterns through entirely natural processes of cementation and joint formation. Identical formations exist on coastlines worldwide. The Bimini Road is impressive but ordinary geology. Theory B is rejected. Natural formation, not man-made. Theory C, Santorini in the Mediterranean. The catastrophic volcanic eruption that destroyed the Minoan civilization on Santorini around 1500 BCE is sometimes proposed as the historical basis of the Atlantis legend. Santorini did experience a sudden civilizational collapse caused by natural disaster. But Plato described an island larger than Libya and Asia combined. Santorini is 20 kilometers across, a small island, not a continent. And Plato explicitly said Atlantis was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, west of Gibraltar, in the Atlantic Ocean. Santorini is east of Gibraltar, in the Mediterranean Sea. The geography is precisely wrong. The Santorini theory also dates the event to 1500 BCE, 7,500 years too recent. Theory C is rejected. Wrong size, wrong location, wrong era. Theory D. The Azores. The Azores sit beyond Gibraltar, in the middle of the Atlantic, exactly where Plato placed Atlantis. The Azores plateau before the Ice Age ended was approximately the right size, comparable to a small continent. The geological record shows catastrophic sinking around 9,500 BCE, exactly the date Plato gave. Megalithic structures dating from 10,000 BCE prove human civilization existed there. A pyramid sits 40 meters down off São Miguel. Theory D matches every condition Plato specified. 3 theories rejected. 1 survives the test. Atlantis was in the Azores. Number 2. The geography matches Plato's exact description. Plato wrote that Atlantis was rich in metals. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge is one of the richest sources of copper, gold, silver, and rare earth metals on Earth. Volcanic hydrothermal vents along the ridge actively deposit these metals in concentrated nodules across the seafloor. Plato wrote that Atlantis had abundant hot springs. The Azores have over 40 active thermal springs distributed across the islands. Some have been continuously used by local inhabitants since the Portuguese rediscovered the islands in 1427, suggesting they were used by earlier populations as well. Plato wrote that the Atlanteans worshipped bulls and performed elaborate bull sacrifice rituals. Bull figurines made of fired clay have been found at several archaeological sites on Terceira Island. Carbon dating places them between 5000 and 3000 BCE. They predate Egyptian bull worship by at least 2000 years. Plato wrote that the Atlantean capital had concentric ring structures, alternating zones of land and water arranged in a target pattern. Satellite imagery of the Azores Plateau, processed by ocean cartographers in 2018, revealed circular geological formations that resemble massive concentric rings inscribed into the underwater terrain. The largest is approximately 10 kilometers across. 10 kilometers is the exact dimension Plato cited for the outermost ring of the Atlantean capital. Plato wrote that the Atlanteans had elaborate stone temples and palaces. The megalithic dolmens of the Azores are precisely such structures, temple-tomb buildings dating to the right era. Plato wrote that the Atlanteans had a powerful naval tradition. Archaeological remains of stone harbor structures have been identified by sonar at multiple sites around the Azores. These are submerged at depths consistent with Ice Age sea levels. 5 specific physical details. 5 exact matches. The probability that all 5 would match by chance is astronomically low. Statisticians who have analyzed similar matching patterns put the odds at less than 1 in 10 million. Plato was not inventing a fictional civilization. He was describing a real place that he had heard about through an unbroken chain of historical transmission. Number 1. The date Plato gave matches the geological record exactly. This is the strongest piece of evidence on this entire list. Plato wrote that Atlantis sank approximately 9,000 years before his own time. Plato wrote in 360 BC. Subtract 9,000 years and you arrive at the date 9360 BC. The geological record shows that meltwater pulse 1b, the specific catastrophic sea level rise that drowned coastal land masses across the planet, occurred between 9500 BCE and 9000 BCE. That is within 140 years of Plato date. A match that precise, across 2400 years of separation, is not coincidence. Think about what this requires. A Greek philosopher in the 4th century BC named a specific date for a specific geological event. 2400 years later, modern geoscientists independently identified the exact same event using methods Plato could not have imagined. Radiocarbon dating, oxygen isotope analysis from ice cores, sediment varve counting, coral growth band measurement. The dates match within a margin of error smaller than a single Greek lifetime. This cannot be coincidence. Plato did not have access to any of the modern dating methods that would later confirm his account. He could not have known about meltwater pulse 1b. He could not have calculated when the last ice age catastrophically ended. The only way Plato could have known is if accurate information had been preserved across thousands of years, through oral tradition, through Egyptian temple records, through some unbroken chain of historical memory stretching back nearly 10,000 years to the actual event. Plato did not write fiction. He wrote down a memory. What this means. Take all 6 pieces of evidence together. The sonar pyramid discovered in 2013. The megalithic dolmens dated to 10,000 BCE. The mid-Atlantic ridge geology that drowns continents. The rigorous elimination of alternative locations. The 5 matching geographic and cultural details. The matching geological date. Each piece individually has skeptics and alternative explanations. But 6 independent lines of evidence, all pointing to the same place, in the same era, with the same characteristics, is no longer coincidence. It is convergence. The convergence says that around 11,500 years ago, a maritime civilization existed on a landmass that is now the Azores Plateau. The civilization built stone temples, mined metals, navigated the Atlantic, and worshipped bulls. It was destroyed by catastrophic sea level rise within a geological eye blink, fast enough that the sinking of the island appeared, to the survivors, to happen in a single day and a single night. The survivors carried the memory. The memory reached Egypt through trade or migration. It was preserved in Egyptian temple records for 9,000 years. It was told to Solon in 590 BC. It was passed down through Solon family. It reached Plato. And what is left of the civilization itself is sitting 40 meters below the Atlantic Ocean, just off São Miguel Island, waiting for the world to take it seriously enough to dig. If you found this video valuable and you want me to keep investigating lost civilizations the official history refuses to acknowledge, subscribe and ring the bell. I am building a library of every ancient megastructure that does not fit the official timeline. Next video, we travel to a completely different mystery. To an underwater complex off the coast of Japan. A massive stepped formation, 60 meters tall, with right angles and carved staircases. Discovered in 1986 by a Japanese diving instructor. It is called the Yonaguni Monument. And depending on which expert you ask, it is either a natural rock formation or the oldest pyramid on Earth. You will not want to miss it.